Most people think discipline is about restriction, about control, about rules. The very word discipline triggers memories of being told what not to do, of limitations, of boundaries that felt like cages. We associate it with sacrifice, punishment, and a kind of robotic rigidity that seems almost inhuman. And so we resist it, we push it away, we label it as something cold, something that stifles creativity or spontaneity or fun. But what if we've misunderstood discipline all along? What if discipline isn't a cage at all, but a key? Think about this. The people we admire most in life, the artists, the athletes, the leaders, the thinkers, are not free because they reject discipline, but because they've mastered it. The musician who plays with effortless expression didn't wake up one day suddenly free to improvise. They practiced scales for hours, every day, for years. The entrepreneur who moves with vision and speed didn't stumble into freedom. They built it one hard decision at a time. And the leader who stands calmly in the storm didn't get lucky. They learned how to control their impulses, to stay focused, to keep showing up when it was easier to check out. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom, it's the foundation of it. When we are undisciplined, we don't live freely, we live reactively. We're not choosing our path, we're being pushed around by circumstance, emotion, and habit. We're not steering the ship, we're being tossed around by the wind. Discipline is what allows us to take the wheel. I want to share a story. A few years ago, I met a young man, we'll call him Matt. Matt was smart, passionate, full of ideas. He wanted to start a business. He had vision, and more importantly, he had heart. But there was one problem. He couldn't seem to follow through. He'd start something strong, then lose steam. He'd plan, he'd dream. But when it came to the doing, when the excitement wore off, he'd drift. Every time we met, there was a new idea, a new direction, but no momentum. One day I asked him, Matt, what do you actually want? He said, I want freedom. I want to live on my own terms. So I asked him a harder question. What are you willing to do every day to earn that freedom? He was quiet for a moment. That question doesn't ask about passion or talent. It asks about discipline. And for a moment, the truth was clear. He had a discipline problem. He had a freedom problem. He thought freedom was about doing what he wanted when he wanted, but real freedom? It's about building something so meaningful that the daily disciplines become worth it. You see, the irony is this. When we chase freedom without discipline, we end up with neither. But when we commit to discipline, we gain both. That's the paradox. A friend of mine is a writer. She writes at the same time every morning at 5:30 a.m. before the sun is up, before the world can interrupt her. For years, she resisted that structure. She thought, I'll write when I feel inspired. And for years, she didn't write. Not really. She scribbled. She started. But she didn't finish. Now, she has multiple published books, not because inspiration suddenly showed up, but because she stopped waiting for inspiration and started inviting it through discipline. When I sit down at 5:30, she told me, the muse knows where to find me. You have to stop thinking of discipline as the opposite of passion. It's the partner of passion. It's what allows us to take that spark and turn it into something that burns. Discipline creates space. Space for clarity, space for creativity, space for depth. Without discipline, we live in chaos. Not the fun, spontaneous kind, but the kind that overwhelms us, that leaves us constantly reacting, constantly stressed, constantly falling short of who we know we could be. And that's the most painful part, because deep down we know we're capable of more. We know we're not giving our best, not because we don't want to, but because we haven't learned how to build the systems that protect our time, our energy, our focus. No, we haven't learned how to protect ourselves from our worst impulses. That's what discipline does. It protects our potential. It's not about perfection. It's not about never slipping up or grinding ourselves into the ground. It's about choosing what matters most and choosing it again and again, especially when it's hard. Because the truth is, we will face resistance. We will have days when we don't feel like it, when the goal feels far, when the grind feels pointless. But in those moments, discipline steps in and says, do it anyway. Not because it's easy, not because you feel like it, but because you said you would, because your future self is depending on you. Because the life you want is built not on occasional inspiration, but on consistent effort. Discipline is the difference between what we say we want and what we actually build. It's how we become trustworthy to ourselves. And when we become trustworthy to ourselves, when we know that we will show up, keep our word, do the work, we stop doubting, we stop questioning our worth, we move with confidence, not because we know we'll succeed every time, but because we know we won't quit when it gets hard. That's freedom. To build discipline is to reclaim our agency, to declare that we are not at the mercy of distraction, emotion, or fear, that we are capable of choosing, of building, of becoming. So let's stop thinking of discipline as a punishment and start seeing it for what it really is. A gift, a key, a path to a life lived on purpose. Because in the end, discipline isn't about control, it's about freedom. And freedom, real freedom, is something we earn. One decision at a time. Some people look at others and say they're just naturally disciplined, as if discipline is something written in our DNA, something we either have or don't. We look at people who wake up early, who stick to their workouts, who write every day, and we say things like, well, they're just wired that way. I could never do that. But here's the truth. Nobody is born disciplined. Discipline is not a personality trait. It's not genetic. It's not something you either inherit or miss out on. It's not some superpower reserved for the elite or the unusually focused. It is a daily choice. A moment-to-moment decision. And like any choice, it starts in the smallest possible way. It begins when the alarm goes off and we choose whether to hit snooze or start the day. It begins when the phone buzzes and we choose whether to scroll or stay focused. It begins when it's easier to give up, easier to delay, easier to lie to ourselves, and we choose not to. Discipline is built in those moments when no one is watching, in the quiet corners of life, where there's no praise, no spotlight, no applause, just you and the decision in front of you. I once met a CEO who told me something that changed how I see discipline. He said, the hardest part of my job isn't making big decisions, it's making the same small ones every single day. That struck me. Because we tend to think that success, achievement, mastery, they come from the big moments, the breakthroughs, the turning points, but they don't. They come from the small, repetitive choices we make when nobody else cares, but we do. That's the real test. When the novelty wears off, when the excitement fades, when the thing you said you wanted starts to feel like a burden, when the path gets hard and there's no guarantee it'll work out, what do you do then? Because discipline doesn't show up when things are easy. It's forged in discomfort, in uncertainty. It's the part of us that whispers, do it anyway, not because we're motivated, not because it feels good, but because the person we're becoming depends on it. I remember talking to a young leader once. She was working on a nonprofit startup, passionate, driven, full of energy, but she was struggling with follow-through. She told me, I want to be disciplined, but I'm just not that type of person. And I asked her, what type of person do you think is disciplined? She paused. Someone who always wants to do the work. Someone who never complains. I smiled. That person doesn't exist, I said. Discipline isn't about wanting to do it. It's about doing it even when you don't. That's the myth we buy into, that discipline means we always feel like it, that it should be effortless. But the truth is, disciplined people struggle too. They get tired. They doubt themselves. They face resistance. The only difference is they don't let those feelings make the decision. They've trained themselves to choose. They've built a system where their values lead, not their moods, where their mission is louder than their excuses, where their identity, who they want to become, guides their behavior. And here's the beautiful thing. Every time we make the right choice, we reinforce that identity. We cast a vote for the person we want to be. One choice might not change your life, but 1,000 little choices, that's how character is built. Discipline is not a straight line. It's not perfection. It's a messy human process. Some days you'll get it right, some days you won't. That's okay. The goal isn't to never fall. It's to rise quicker each time, to shorten the gap between failure and recommitment. There's a quote I love. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. Discipline is the system. It's what you fall back on when motivation runs dry. It's the scaffolding that holds up your intentions, and like any system, it has to be maintained, adjusted, rebuilt sometimes, but it gives you something to lean on when your willpower alone won't cut it. People often ask me, What's the secret to staying consistent? And the answer is boring. Make the choice easier to make. If you want to work out in the morning, lay your clothes out the night before. If you want to write, schedule time on your calendar. If you want to eat better, clean out your fridge. Make the discipline choice the default one. Because discipline isn't about being strong all the time. It's about being smart enough to reduce friction. It's about designing your life so that the right choices become the path of least resistance. I've seen people completely transform, not because they suddenly became different, but because they stopped waiting for discipline to show up like magic and started choosing it in small, manageable ways. It's brushing your teeth, taking the walk, making the call, turning off the TV, saying no when you want to say yes, saying yes when fear says no. Each of those tiny moments adds up. And over time, you wake up and realize you didn't become disciplined overnight. You became disciplined, one choice at a time. We have to stop thinking of discipline as this thing that other people have. It's not something you're born with. It's something you build, like trust, like character, like strength. And it starts today, not tomorrow, not next Monday, not when the stars align. It starts with a choice in front of you right now. The one you've been putting off, the one you know matters, the one that feels small but isn't. You don't have to be a different person to build discipline. You just have to be someone who's willing to start choosing differently, again and again, until it becomes who you are. That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. And when you understand that discipline isn't a gift, it's a decision, you realize you're not powerless. You never were. There's this funny thing we do as human beings. We get excited by the big moments, the launches, the breakthroughs, the transformations. We love the dramatic, the before and after, the highlight reel. And in chasing that intensity, we often miss the power of the ordinary. We think progress has to be loud, that change has to feel electric, that if we're not moving fast, we're not moving at all. But the truth is far less glamorous. The truth is this: real growth is boring. Yes, boring. And that's why so many people miss it, because it's not exciting to do the same thing every day. It's not thrilling to wake up early, eat the same breakfast, do the same reps, have the same meeting, go through the same routine. There's no music playing in the background, no one's clapping, no one's filming it for a motivational video. It's just you doing the thing again and again and again. But if we look closely, that repetition isn't the absence of growth, it is the growth. It's not a plateau, it's a foundation. And without it, nothing we build will last. There's a reason professional athletes run drills they learned in grade school. There's a reason world-class musicians still practice scales. There's a reason the most successful people you know live by routines that seem from the outside utterly unremarkable. It's not because they lack imagination, it's because they understand something most people don't. Consistency beats intensity. Every time. Anyone can sprint for a day. Anyone can work hard when they're inspired, when the energy is high and the vision is clear. Anyone can make a promise in the heat of a moment. But discipline? That's not about how hard you can go, it's about how long you can stay the course. There's a story I once heard about a stone cutter. He strikes a rock 100 times with his hammer and nothing happens. It's not a crack, not a shift, not even a sound. But on the 101st strike, the rock splits clean in two. Now, was it the final strike that made it happen? Of course not. It was every strike that came before it. That's how consistency works. You may not see progress right away. You might feel like nothing is changing. But every repetition, every effort, every boring, thankless act is moving you closer, even if you can't see it yet. The reason most people don't build what they're capable of building is not because they don't have the talent, it's because they can't stomach the boredom of doing what works over and over again. We live in a world obsessed with quick wins. We're told to hustle, to grind, to go all in. But very few talk about what happens after the rush fades. What happens when the novelty wears off? What happens when motivation disappears and it's just you and the next day of showing up. That's where most dreams die, not in failure, but in boredom. I once worked with a young startup founder, brilliant guy, visionary thinker. He could rally a team with just a few words. But every few months, he would pivot, change the product, rebrand the company, shift the entire strategy. Not because the idea wasn't working, but because he got bored. He wanted fireworks, he wanted the high of the launch, he wanted the feeling of starting something, but he didn't want to sit in the middle, the quiet, difficult middle where real things are built. So he kept starting over, and nothing ever stuck. You can't out-hustle inconsistency. You can't work hard your way around it. The people who create real impact, who leave a legacy, who build what matters, they learn to fall in love with the process, not just the outcome. They embrace the boring. Because the boring repeated over time becomes something beautiful. A pianist once told me, I've played the same scale every morning for 20 years, not because I have to, but because it reminds me that mastery begins with the basics. Think about that. We want to be experts, but we avoid the basics. We want to be fit, but we avoid the daily reps. We want change, but only if it comes with excitement. But nothing that lasts is built on excitement alone. What lasts is built on rhythm, on repetition, on showing up when it's hard, on doing the work when no one is watching, on trusting that small efforts compounded over time will create something extraordinary. There's a quiet confidence that comes from consistency. It's not flashy, it's not loud, but it's steady, and in a world that moves a mile a minute, steadiness is a superpower. You don't have to do extraordinary things every day. You just have to do ordinary things consistently. Want to get stronger? Go to the gym, even when you don't feel like it. Want to be a better writer? Write every day, even when the words don't flow. Want to be a better partner? Show up for the small moments, not just the big ones. Want to lead better? Keep your promises, even the ones no one else remembers. Because that's the thing about consistency. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you become. When you keep showing up, you prove something to yourself. You build trust, not with others, but with yourself. And that's the foundation of all confidence. Not talent, not charisma, not even results. Trust. The kind of trust that says, I will keep going, even when it's hard, even when it's dull, even when no one notices, because this matters. Discipline isn't about doing everything today, it's about doing something today, and tomorrow, and the next day. That's how you win. That's how you grow. That's how you build anything worth building. So the next time you're tempted to quit, not because it's impossible, but because it's boring, remember this. Boring is the path. Repetition is the secret. Consistency is the strategy. Not just once, but always. Every great thing you admire was built that way, and so will you be. We like to believe that willpower is enough, that all we need is more grit, more hustle, more internal strength. If we just had more self-control, we'd stay consistent, we'd follow through, we'd be disciplined. But we rarely talk about the silent architect behind most of our decisions, the environment we're in. Discipline doesn't live in isolation. It's not something you just will into existence. It's not about being the strongest person in the room. It's about designing a room that supports your strength. The people we surround ourselves with, the places we spend our time, the way our spaces are arranged, the habits we normalize, those things matter. In fact, they matter more than we want to admit. Because if we admit they matter, then we have to admit that we're not as self-made as we think. And that's hard for the ego. We want to be in total control. We want to believe we're tough enough, focused enough, independent enough to push through anything. But the truth is, even the strongest people get tired. Even the most disciplined minds are influenced by what's around them. Environment is not neutral. It either fuels your discipline or it quietly erodes it. I once worked with a leader who had all the drive in the world, smart, sharp, incredibly ambitious. But he kept falling into the same cycle, burnout, frustration, distraction, and he blamed himself every time, thought he just needed more motivation. But when we look closer, it wasn't a motivation problem, it was an environment problem. His calendar was chaos, no boundaries. His team was reactive, no planning. His workspace was a mess, no clarity. Every day he was fighting a current he had created without realizing it, and every time he failed to stay focused, he blamed his willpower. But willpower is a terrible long-term strategy. It's like using a matchstick to light a fire in a storm. It might catch for a moment, but it won't last. What lasts is design. What lasts is systems. What lasts is an environment built to support who you want to become. So he got to work. He began building structure into his days. He put buffers in his calendar, started each morning without email, created spaces for deep work, adjusted how he communicated with his team. And over time, slowly, quietly, things began to shift, not because he changed overnight, but because the world around him stopped fighting his best intentions. You see, when your environment aligns with your values, discipline becomes easier, not effortless, but easier. Imagine trying to eat healthy while keeping junk food in every drawer, or trying to stay focused with 10 browser tabs open and your phone buzzing every 5 minutes. Imagine trying to wake up early while going to bed with the TV on and notifications lighting up your nightstand. That's not a discipline problem. That's a design problem. The most disciplined people don't have more willpower than you. They've just learned to reduce the friction between intention and action. They've learned that the path to discipline isn't paved with self-punishment. It's cleared by thoughtful design. That means setting up your space for focus. It means surrounding yourself with people who pull the best out of you. It means choosing environments that encourage the behaviors you want to repeat. And maybe most importantly, it means protecting yourself from your future tired, tempted self. Because when you're tired, stressed, or bored, you won't make the best decision. You'll make the easiest one. That's human. That's not weakness, that's wiring. So why not stack the deck in your favor? Why not prepare the environment in a way that helps your future self win? A reason writers often write in the same spot. A reason the military trains with discipline embedded into every detail of the day. They're not just practicing skill, they're reinforcing environment. Repetition creates rhythm, and rhythm creates identity. If you want to change your behavior,